Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Round 2 of the Six Nations is upon us, and also is Ian McKinley for the first time this year. You've been here before, but you're back again. We paid the big fee, obviously.
Thank you, Stu. Yes, coming out of your pocket.
yes, exactly. Wouldn't get much in there.
No.
What about tomorrow? How excited are you? Italy coming to town after the big win in Rome against Scotland. Ireland, we're still not sure. So it's a big opportunity for the Italian to go and win again. Yes, that might seem a lot, but there is a chance.
Yeah, I suppose, we're big followers of rugby, Stu, aren't we? And I suppose from the year 2000, whenever the Five Nations became the Six Nations, it's always sort of been a dead rubber. That Italy-Ireland game in Dublin, if you're to cast your mind back, you sort of think of, was it 2008 when it was 16-11? I think that's been the only time there's been one score in that fixture. So, and the average has been 36-12. When you go across the board, Ireland would win comfortably by 20 points. I think this is the first time since 2000 that you can probably think or dare to think that Italy are posing a question. I'm not saying that Italy are going to win. I'll just say it out now. Like now, I think Ireland will still win. I think Ireland will win by about 10 points, maybe 10 to 15. You'd expect a reaction, but it's the first time since I can remember that at least the question has been asked, and that can only be a sort of credit to where the Italian team has got. It also maybe shows that Ireland have had a little dip, but I still think that there's too much, obviously, in that Irish team to fall at home to an Italian team. But listen, the Italian lads will come over with a huge amount of confidence.
They will, and I asked you before, where were you in 2013, where Chiara won the match in Rome, and I asked, were you playing? And you said, no, Stuart, I'm not that old. But on a different point alongside that, they have done it once, but not since 97 in Dublin. And also, I'm thinking, it's a new Italian team. They've beaten Australia, but after last week, it sort of depends. Are they still buzzing off that? Or are they determined to be like, hold on, we can go and really make a big name across Europe and go and try and really punish Ireland if we can upset them?
Oh yeah, this would be, I know Italy has never beaten England in the Six Nations, but to win in Dublin would be the biggest result and the biggest shock. But I've really enjoyed how Italy have gone about it, and I think credit to Casada and all sort of the leadership group. They haven't seemed to lose the run of themselves. And I think the most impressive thing, if we're to go back a little bit just on that Scotland game, was their set piece. Traditionally, we always think how strong Italian teams, historically, it was sort of 8-man, 10-man, whenever Dominguez was playing, game, and their scrum and their line out was so strong. Went away from that for a number of years, and now with the pack they have, and if you're to single out a couple of players, you've Simone Ferrari as tight head. He's 31 now, coming into the prime of his career. Andrea Zambonin, who's second row, 6'8", plying his trade in Exeter, put Scotland under all sorts of pressure. Ireland, obviously that was a huge question mark, wasn't it, going into the France game? The set piece stood up really well. Scrum was solid. Line out was solid. So it's going to be a fascinating battle. It'll be interesting to see what way the weather will play as a factor. It obviously played into Italy's hands. Scotland ball playing team. But it's the first time since Italy have won a first game in 2013, in that championship, if we're to go back to that year. So, and it's definitely going to be a game that they'll be targeting. You think the way that England or France are playing, that's going to be a pretty hard game. You go into every game, obviously you take it as it comes. But if you're to think of 3 games that they're targeting, it's going to be the Scotland one, Wales, given just where they're at the moment, and the way Ireland are performing, the Ireland one. So yeah, it's really intriguing. Flip side of it, what way are the exchanges going to be perceived around the squad? Are they going to?
I was going to say that you took the next question rightly. So
I'm reading your notes.
With the 6 alterations, some are forced, obviously, but Balakoon comes in. What an opportunity! Odogbo from the bench. Odogbo, Conan, Timney maybe unlucky, but there's also just some big names. As Azzurri gets a chance, and many have talked in the past. Oh, Andy Farrell is about the present, but the World Cup in 20 months, he's been forced his hands. But I find, as an Irish supporter, this is quite an exciting thing.
Yeah, well, I think you have to remind ourselves as well that you look at the names that were missing from the first matchday squad against France. Ireland, I suppose, have never been in the luxury like in England or France to have 3 squads, to that level. So whenever you need basically all your best players playing and firing at the same time. And some of those are world-class players. There are still some world-class players in this team. It's exciting to see Balogun. Obviously, he's just unlucky with injury throughout his career, but he's got something that this Irish backline is probably lacking, and that's just out-and-out raw pace. And if you were to compare to the French game last week, there were 5 players accounted on the French backline that just had out-and-out raw pace, and that's something very hard to coach. But yeah, it is exciting. I mean, Casey gets an opportunity. Azzurri, as you said, and
James Ryan.
Yeah, and
Burns on the bench.
Whether these were predetermined, the way sometimes obviously you try and map out as best as you can, which usually the Italy game has been historically, the one that you would give guys an opportunity, or has this been, as you say, forced or based on the performance?
I would say maybe before, not to take words out of your mouth, that a couple were predetermined, but then after France, it sort of changed his plan a wee bit. Yeah,
and I would expect. You expect big performances all the time. It's a a non-negotiable. Obviously, when you pull on an international jersey, your performances obviously merit your selection and everything like that. But I expect a big performance from the big Irish players, which I think was probably the disappointing. I think there were two elements that were disappointing. One, maybe how Ireland played, particularly in that first half from an attacking standpoint, and the big players just didn't seem to stand up. Obviously, the bench in the second half, Michael Millen, surprised not to see his name. Obviously, Nick Timoney, they brought great energy when they came onto the pitch. But I expect, I suppose, as if you're an Irish supporter, big game from, Joe McCarthy now. You expect a big game from James Ryan. You expect a big game from Prendergast. Doris. I mean, you're only as good as your last game and all this sort of stuff. Ringrose, you could go through the whole team, and I think that they, for their own individual performance levels, need to get up to speed pretty quickly. But as a collective, to gain more momentum, it's so important that they hit the ground running, I think, and put in an 80-minute complete performance, because the game after that is a tough one against England. So they'll be looking to try and, I suppose, garner as much momentum as possible going into that game.
For years, between 2022 and even I know they won the championship in 2024. They're at their peak, or their best time was 2023, and their DNA was this flowing attacking. What's this Ireland's team? Over the last 6 months, what are they good at? In your opinion?
I suppose if you're to pick up on maybe the attacking side of things, I think if we're you try not to take things in isolation, do you? Look for common trends and themes along the way. But a thing that just popped into my mind whenever we were doing the game together was...
You're very kind. You're always name dropping me in.
Well, that's 3 times this week, Stu. So I just, that's not to be forgotten.
Hat-trick, you'll be celebrating.
Oh, exactly. I wish I got a hat-trick of tries at international rugby, but you can always dare to dream. But it just felt everything was just so manufactured, and it wasn't this natural game. Like Ireland, previously were brilliant at the high ruck count, the multi-phase. Obviously, you need the fitness, you need accuracy to play all that, but you also had one of the world's best pulling the strings. In that, you have, I suppose, a transitioning of players into that position, which again does take time. I know people don't like to hear that, but it does take time to get up to speed to international rugby. I know, Crowley has 30 odd caps now, and was Prendergast on and 14. And Crowley was at the helm for the championship winning run a couple of years ago. But just again, if I'm to go back, I'm sort of meandering off, but when you go back into isolation for that game, like, it just seemed that France knew everything Ireland were trying to do in attack. And when you go to the air and you lose the aerial battle, which I'm sure maybe, the weather, it was slightly greasy, maybe it was the, pre-game, this was the idea to go with Gibson Park and kick from the middle of the field and everything. But, if you don't win the aerial battle, it's very difficult to try and get any momentum into the game. Whereas France looked like they were playing a completely different game. Quick line-outs, broken play, and that's the best time to attack against any defence, is when it's not set and organised. And you sort of step back and you think that you overanalyze things, but then when you actually look at it as a whole, you go, well, that is the best time to attack, is usually deep in your own half, whenever people are back anticipating long kicks, or whenever it's that broken field stuff. And it just feels like that Ireland are just obviously lacking in that, going back to that speed, the game break. But the most stark thing, I think, was obviously Andy Farrell talking about intent, and that's been brought up a huge amount this week. And unlike him to call out, I suppose, not individual players, of course, but just when you use the words lack of intent, that is, you don't associate that at all. So
that's what he said, and were you surprised he said that?
No, I admire him for it, because this is a different team, so maybe you need a different approach, and people need to be reminded that you need to perform. Like, when you get the jersey, it's a privilege, and guys do, absolutely, but sometimes there's no harm in getting a kick up the backside. You need that, and sometimes you need to be dropped to then sharpen the mind, focus the mind again. Because you think of the players that have been in there for such a long time, like Van der Fleer and co. Like, their performances have been so consistent over so many years. Sometimes it does dip, and you might just need a little kick to get back up there. So I think that the biggest thing from the Irish team, I think, is that intent first and foremost, both in defence and intent with the ball. I know international rugby is, it's about the kicking game, it's about discipline, it's about pitch position and everything. But there's still enough good players for Ireland to play a multi-phase game, or at least try and score within 3 phases. Or so I think just general positivity about how they go on Saturday, I think, will be the thing that generally the public will be looking out for.
The public are also obviously all in the fly half, as you know, position. Yeah. It's actually really fascinating to get your point of view. It's just popped in my head. So you were one yourself, competed with Tommy Allen and plenty of other fly halves, right? Kieran Crowley was your coach, or whoever it was at the time, I think it was. And in your mind at the time, would you love a coach to say, which doesn't happen anymore, right, you're getting the next 5 games, there's 2 other guys around you who are as good and are pushing you? Or did you never expect that? And I'm trying to relate that to the current situation. And I get it. No, a coach can say, right, this is your free saddle for the next 2 months or 3 months, because we all injuries and also form. But do you feel for these guys? Because it seems like you're up on a pedestal, then you're down, then you're down, and then if you don't perform in the provinces, it's like, geez, are we now pushing what was so nice to have, and guys were relishing for a jersey? Now it's like, who wants to take it instead of the negatives outweighing the positives?
Yeah, well, I think that's it. It's up there for grabs, and who wants to come and get it. Now, obviously, a couple of things. I mean, Farrell has Prendergast down as his favourite. I mean, I don't think you need to delve much more into that. Going back to your point, do I feel sorry in the sense that I try and imagine, I mean, I'm old and decrepit now at 36, but I try and think back whenever I was trying to break through a Leinster and an Irish system at the age of 18, 19, 20. Like, everything is under the microscope now, and I'm always conscious and careful about what I certainly say, because I know if I was in their position, it's a hard position to be in, because everything that you do is under the microscope. I think I always get asked the question, just because you played out half, which camp are you in? And, I would still say I'm in 4 camps. I still think that there's Prendergast, there's Crowley, there's Harry Byrne, and there's still Kieran Frawley. Now, obviously, Kieran Frawley is not probably at the top of the list.
3 camps at the moment.
Yeah, I think I can totally see different arguments for playing different players. They all have different skill sets, they all have different strengths, and they all have different work-ons. If I'm to say out of the 3 of them who's probably the most complete, I would probably say Harry Byrne. But I don't think Harry gets up to the same level in an attacking sense, even though he's very talented, can do things I certainly couldn't do, but doesn't probably get up to what Sam can do and see. Jack is probably more of a natural athlete, and people have teed up whether he'd be good for Ireland at 15. You know, it could be an option. So, like, it's difficult, I think, even for the public to make a decision, because I don't even think, actually, apart from Farrell, and this, I could be completely off with this, but I still think that they're not actually dead set, if you know, apart from Farrell on this. If you're trying to think of longevity going into a World Cup, and if I'm to go back on what you asked at the start, which was, would you have preferred to have a plan, knowing what you were doing? 100%, because you can at least prepare to the best of your ability, knowing what's happening, and then afterwards you obviously reevaluate the situation. That never happened anyway. Personally, at international level, don't know what goes on in the Irish system, but I think the thing for Prendergast is that those games against South Africa. Now, I know that was a unique game, just taking it as a whole, and France, I just don't think as of yet they're the type of games that suit him. Do you know what I mean? Where you need to roll up the sleeves and you need to almost go into the trenches. You're not able to, you know, go out the back so many times and play these gorgeous passes, which he can do. But sometimes you just need to roll up the sleeves and just dog it out.
Or are you still very concerned as defence? If you are.
Well, he's not that type of player. He's a Rolls Royce sort of a player. He can glide through gaps. He can put people into space unbelievably well. But the thing you find out about international rugby is that you've less time and space. And yes, that little double pump that in the lead up to Timoney's try, McCluskey got his hands free. You know, that was a sign, I suppose, of Crowley being a first receiver, him playing there. Like, people have thrown out that idea, you know, of having a double playmaker scenario. But yeah, I mean, listen, as long as Sam is in that 10 position, or whatever position he comes on, whether it's a sub out half position, teams will target him. That's, you know, they will run down his channel. If Ireland try and put him in the backfield or as a blindside winger, they'll find him. You know, I did actually think he tackled a lot better, even though his percentages are still not high in that France game. But that's something that he's going to have to learn pretty quickly at international level, is that you can maybe hide away in URC games, but international stuff you can't.
So contrast, no Brex, unfortunately, for Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Huge loss, to say the obvious.
Yeah, he's a real talisman for them. And yeah, Nacho, I started playing with Nacho at club level whenever he first moved over from Argentina. And I don't say this lightly, probably one of the best defenders I've ever played with, really.
Great with ball in hand too, Ian.
Improved a huge amount because, again, would have struggled to, and he would admit this himself, you know, throw long passes or anything like that. But he actually, Andrea Mazzi, who's one of the great Italian players, now coach, he sort of revolutionised his attacking game with this, you know, passing off the base, and he becomes a first receiver where you see Menoncello running short lines off him or out the back. And that sort of revolutionised a little bit how he is played. But he gives so much to the team just in terms of confidence in the defence. And that's been a big thing you always talk about, is Italy's discipline in defence. And they were outstanding against Scotland. They really were. Looked comfortable. Didn't do any silly penalties. There was one I can think of, Nicolo Canone. You could argue that the Scottish player wasn't attached, but there wasn't a repeat of those. There was one, and that was nipped in the bud, and that was it. So yeah, he's a huge loss. Leonardo Marin, who's a young kid, he, you know, can play in three positions. He's going in at centre. He's playing a lot with Benetton this year because Nacho has moved on to Toulon, but it's still...
At least he'll know the systems because he's Benetton.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a Benetton heavy team. All you have to do is look at the pack, and from 3 to 8 is Benetton. And what's exciting as well is that there is game breakers. Like, you know, we speak a lot about, well, I do anyway, Menoncello. I just think he's brilliant. Like, and I'm
He is.
not being biased, like, but he is just brilliant. I would have loved to have been there when he was coming through. You know, Monty, Lorenzo Pani, for people who might remember a couple of years ago, whenever you had the Capozzo break against Wales, but then the couple of years after, then great set piece play, and Pani was there. He's been unlucky with injury, and the back row is good. Like, it's a good back row, and they're Italy are missing players as well. Capozzo's coming back, and
Your mate Seb.
my mate Seb, we won't give him too much of a plug, but he's big presence. He is what a Doris is for Ireland.
He's good too.
Yeah. So yeah, listen, it's very rare to be 100% at every Test game, and it gives an opportunity, I'm sure, for Andy Farrell, for Gonzalo Quesada, to look at other players and try and build for the Six Nations, build for the World Cup. And it's probably, they're down down the depth chart further for Ireland, but you might look back at the end of it and go, that was no bad thing to try and get a look at all these different players.
Last couple, because we have to get this out before tomorrow. Of course it's live. For Ireland, there's a bit of concern maybe from the outside, including myself and the media. What do we know? But that we're sort of on a downward trend. Agree or disagree?
I don't think it's as doom and gloom as maybe it's been made out to be from the media. Again, I go back to, you go through the list of players that, particularly for that France game, were out. Is a massive list, and there'd be players that are in and around the starting squad. You also take into consideration the 4 players that have left recently when you think of Cian Healy, Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton. Like, combined, I mean, that's a lot of caps. I mean, that's, well over 400,
And Earls wasn't too far behind that too.
Yeah, and they're like, you throw in, that's a lot of caps, that's a lot of experience. The 4 warriors who have, been in the trenches, have seen the good and the bad, and they're characters to replace. There's a natural, obviously, evolution with teams, flow and up and down. So yeah, the team is not as strong as it was a couple of years ago. It's not to say like that they can't get close to those levels, but those are big characters to lose. I don't think it's as alarm stations yet. If there's not a performance, because you expect a result, if there isn't a performance, I think that's when you might go, now time to maybe just start to worry a little bit, because...
So basically in 80 minutes
No,
time,
not in 80 minutes, but then the conversation starts to get a bit more weight behind it, doesn't it? Because then you look at the example with Scotland, don't you? People saying that Scotland could potentially win the Six Nations, and after 80 minutes you're having a completely different conversation, and that's the nature of sport. But you would expect, even with the team that's out, that Ireland would win this, but yeah, mightn't be as comfortable as previous years.
And just in case we won't have you back, but we will. England or France for the championship?
I went England at the start. I know that last game is in Paris, isn't it? So, listen, France are, playing some unbelievable rugby, game breakers, power, athleticism, size, everything that's good about rugby. But England as well are just, they look like that they found their magic recipe. And you think of the players that they have on their bench to come on, and Curry and Pollock. Have they gone to sort of a South African style, some of our stronger players, and then we put them on with sort of 30 minutes to go to give us the injection. George Ford playing some of his best rugby. So yeah, it'll be obviously between those two teams, but I just have a niggling suspicion that it might be England.
Super. Well, Ian, we are on Audio Descriptive tomorrow, which is brilliant. You've enjoyed that, haven't you?
Is that another plug? So that's your fourth plug. No, I'm jokes aside, Stu. No, it's brilliant working with you on it. And yeah, I suppose for people who don't know, it's Virgin Media 4, isn't it, that is providing the audio descriptive commentary on the Irish Sign Language. So no, brilliant to be a part of it. Really groundbreaking stuff. So credit to Virgin Media. I'm not just saying that because I am in a Virgin Media studio, but it is brilliant and really enjoyable to be a part of. And we're exhausted by the end of it.
Great, Ian. Super to have you in. And don't forget, everyone, thanks for listening and watching. And tune in tomorrow from 1:30 for all the build up to Ireland against Italy from the Aviva Stadium.